Can AI predict the future? You know, it's one of humanity's oldest obsessions, right? It's the whole reason science even exists. And now, there's this brand new benchmark that's asking if AI can finally connect all the dots today to actually forecast tomorrow. So let's explore how it's using real money and real markets to find out.
All right, so here's the game plan. We'll start with the AI progress problem, then look at the rise of prediction markets. After that, we'll introduce something called profit arena. See what happens when AI goes up against the crowd. Ask if it's a genuinely useful benchmark, and wrap up with the mind-bending prediction paradox.
So, let's kick things off with this idea that's been floating around a lot lately, the feeling that AI progress is kind of hitting a plateau. You've probably seen the headlines, right? Is this as good as AI gets? But what if the problem isn't the AI at all? What if the problem is the ruler we're using to measure it?
And look, this is not just some philosophical question. The answer to this literally shapes billions of dollars in investment, not to mention our entire vision for the future. If we don't have good ways to measure progress, how can we possibly know where the real frontier of AI actually is?
You know, there's a bit of a psychological trick happening here. When a model jumps from 70 to 80% on a test, that feels huge, a 10-point leap. But a jump from 92 to 93%, it feels tiny, almost like a slowdown, even though that single percentage point at the top is way, way harder to achieve. It creates this illusion that progress is just ground to a halt.
And that brings us to the technical term for this whole problem: benchmark saturation. To put it simply, our old yardsticks just aren't long enough anymore. The AIs are basically acing all our existing tests, which means the tests themselves are too easy to tell us which model is actually smarter.
Okay, so if the old tests are broken, where do we find a new one? Well, let's pivot to this other trend that's been happening at the same time, because it holds a huge piece of the answer. I'm talking about the explosive growth of prediction markets, where people are putting real money on the line to forecast events.
Now, let's be real. $20 million in a month isn't going to break the global economy. The market's still pretty small. But it's not nothing either. It's a very clear signal that this is grabbing the attention of serious people who have a financial reason to be right.
This is the number that really tells the story. 1,000% increase since just the start of the year. That shows a massive, massive wave of interest. People are flocking to these markets to get a real pulse on the AI race, one that's backed by cold, hard cash, not just, hot takes on social media.
I love this quote from the Wall Street Journal because it just captures the whole vibe perfectly. This abstract AI arms race is turning into something you can bet on, like a horse race. And the idea is simple. When people have actual skin in the game, they're forced to do their homework. And that creates this kind of collective wisdom that's way more powerful than just casual opinion.
So this is where it all comes together. On one side, you've got this desperate need for better AI tests. On the other, you have the rise of these powerful real money prediction markets. And some researchers at the University of Chicago had a brilliant idea. What if we just smash them together?
So say hello to Profit Arena. The goal here is to test an AI's ability to do something humans have been trying to do forever. Take all these different bits of information and use them to actually predict what's going to happen next. And this isn't some multiple choice test. It's a live competition against the collective brain power of the human crowd.
So how does it actually work? Well, the platform grabs real events from these prediction markets. The AI models are constantly scraping for new information, updating their forecasts, and even explaining why they're making a prediction. This goes on and on until the event happens, and then its performance gets graded against what actually went down.
And here's this super important point. Performance is measured in two different ways. You've got the Breyer score, which is all about pure statistical accuracy. How close was your guess to reality? But then you have average return, which asks a different question. Could you have actually made money off the AI's predictions? And as we're about to see, being right and being profitable are two very different things.
All right, so you unleashed these super powerful AIs into the wild west of real money prediction markets. What happens? Well, the initial results are absolutely fascinating and, I gotta say, kind of surprising.
Just take a look at this early leaderboard. The most accurate model, by the Breyer score, is GPT-5. No big shock there, right? But the most profitable model, the one that could actually make you money, it's a much smaller model called O3 Mini. This just goes to show you, the smartest kid in the classroom isn't always the best investor on Wall Street.
And here's a perfect, real-world example of how that works. The human market gave the Toronto FC soccer team just an 11% chance of winning a match. But O3 Mini looked at all the data and said, nope, it's more like 30%. It saw that the crowd had mispriced the odds. And sure enough, Toronto won. A bet based on that AI's logic would have paid out a 9-to-1 return. That's finding a real edge.
What's also really cool is that this benchmark reveals that different models have, well, they have different personalities. You give them the exact same data on something like AI regulation, and you get totally different takes. Queen 3 comes in hot at 75%. Llama 4 Maverick is super conservative at 35%. You're not just getting a score, you're seeing a model's whole style of thinking.
So the big question, is this thing actually useful or is it just a neat academic project? Well, the reaction from people who actually build and work with this stuff every day, they seem to think it's a huge step forward.
This tweet from an AI researcher named Tonka really sums up how a lot of people are feeling. After years of dealing with these stale, outdated tests, this feels like a breath of fresh air. It's a benchmark that's actually measuring a skill we can all agree is a sign of real-world intelligence.
And another developer, Simon Smith, pretty much hit the nail on the head, pointing out the 3 big reasons why it's so good. It's practical, forecasting is a valuable skill, it's always up to date because reality is constantly throwing new test questions at it, and maybe most important of all, it's impossible to game. You can't just cheat and memorize the answers when the test is, well, the future.
You know, this whole thing goes way beyond just being a technical tool. It's fundamentally challenging our ideas about what skills are uniquely human. There's this great little story about a venture capitalist who always felt his job was safe because predicting the future was his special skill. Profit Arena is basically telling him, maybe not.
But, and this is a really big but, as AI gets more powerful and more trusted at making these predictions, it opens up this deep, almost philosophical can of worms. And it might be one of the biggest challenges we face in the next decade.
We're talking about the feedback loop of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Just imagine a world where a super trusted AI says, the stock market is going to crash tomorrow. What does everyone do? They rush to sell all their stocks, which then causes the very crash the AI predicted. The act of predicting starts to change the reality it's supposed to be just observing.
And that's the final thought I really want to leave you with. As these tools get woven deeper and deeper into how we make decisions, we might have to start asking a different question. Not just, was the AI's prediction correct, but did the AI's prediction cause the outcome? The line between just watching and actually influencing is getting blurrier and blurrier. And honestly, that changes everything.